Well, you look like three fine lads. You know, I might have something here you'd like to try. Something to make you feel real good.
There's myriad wild and wonderful ways to say no. No thanks. No way.
Better learn a few and take 'em wherever you go.
No thanks, no sir.
If your pal says let's get high,
Here's a practical reply.
Go ahead, let's fly, spit right in his eye and say no.
There's a million international ways to say no.
Those drugs are so boring.
All around the world, the smart guys are giving up dope.
I'm intrigued for football.
People didn't say just say no.
And they tell me that works fine. Cause the bottom line's to show me trying to say no. Now you could say beat it, get lost, get out of my face with that stuff.
but that could be tactless. You may prefer cool, like this. I'll get you guys later, okay?
I've got too much homework. It's rough.
I'm late for my baseball game and I'll miss my
My
ride.
kid sister needs me.
Her hamster died.
Hurry home.
There's no time to kill, so I'll catch you later.
Like heck I will.
There's a million wild and wonderful ways to say no.
Guess I'm
And
allergic.
a good excuse is something you never outgrow.
That's my complexion.
When your pal say let's get wrecked,
Muster up your self-respect.
Go on, push, eject, protect yourself. Get up and go.
Be the first one on your block to say.
yeah, forget it, Doc.
Try a couple of those wonderful ways to say no. But you forgot one. What? There's myriad, zillion wonderful ways to say no. Stop that, no, demonstrate. There's myriad, zillion wonderful ways to say
I remember growing up watching the All-Star games with Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL Pro Bowl was always a big deal. But have you ever heard of a cartoon All-Star game? Well, let's get into that. Welcome to the St. Canard Files, a Darkwing Duck podcast. I'm your host, Will Santana, and
Hey, I'm alive. And the co-host today is Mike Russo. How's everyone doing?
how's it going, Mike?
I'm good. I'm good. And also joining us is our friend from the UK, Tim Partridge.
Hi.
How's it going, Tim?
Well, thank you. Good to hear your voice again, Mike. It's been a while.
It's been a very long time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to be back for this episode.
Oh yeah, man. It's good to hear Mike's again, man. It's been so long since me and you have recorded together. But unfortunately, we're not doing a Darkwing episode today, man.
No, we're doing something very different.
Okay, before we get into something very, very different, Mike, and Tim, I'm not too sure if you've been reading the Darkwing comics, Mike. I know you haven't been too fond of them. Has it grown any? You still the same? It gotten worse to you? Where you at now?
I'll tell you this much. I actually liked Negaduck #1.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't bad. I'm still not feeling the other one though.
Oh, it's the other one that doesn't
Still
have a
not
name.
still not. What is it? These issues are already been titled, so it's just Darkwing Duck, and I'm just not feeling it, man. But Negaduck is very good. I actually really enjoyed that. And I guess perhaps part of why I stopped doing the show is that I felt like after a while, it would just be me ragging on these things. And
Mhm.
I don't want to be a downer, you know? That's not fair to the listeners. That's a part of it. Although
Mhm.
sometimes you just kind of gotta know when it's time to move on, you know?
Yeah.
But I never said I was totally gone. And when you asked me to come back and do this episode with you, I thought it was a really good idea.
Okay. And Tim, have you any chance read the Darkwing comics or the Negaduck comics yet?
Not yet, but I've really loved the covers on the Darkwing series. Some of them are really great. I believe there's an artist, Kat Staggs. I think some of her stuff looks fantastic, the covers that I've seen. And everything I've heard about Negaduck is totally positive, and the artwork looks great, looks absolutely fantastic. I love the artwork that we've got from some of these comics, just wonderful.
Okay, now I guess I'm gonna touch it really quick. I semi-agree with Tim. I think some of the covers are really bad. Some of the covers are decent. There's a few of them that are good. I've only read up to I think issue 6, Mike. I'm not fond of it at all. Maybe 1 so far. The Darkwing I was okay with 1. The rest no. Negaduck I haven't read yet, but just like you, I haven't heard any bad things about Negaduck.
Yeah, Negaduck is drawn better, and the story is better as well. I don't know what they're doing with the main Darkwing comic. It's just not for me.
All right. Well, before we haven't even just told people what our topic is for today, but really quick, just today, as a Darkwing purist, a Darkwing fan, I am a proud person today to say that to have arranged Dev Ross, the writer of The Hunting Mr. Banana Brain and Time and Punishment. There's one episode I will never name from her. And
I know which one it is.
And Aaron Sparrow, the writer of, from the Joe Book series and Definitively Dangerous, correct?
Yes.
All right. He's at an event. They're all at an event sponsored by We Can Be Heroes Comic. It's called Comics and Cocktails. And a guest appearance just showed up, Mr. Tad Stones. So
which is pretty crazy because he hasn't done a show in a while.
yeah, you know, the Godfather of Darkwing is there. So like, man, I'm just I'm jealous I'm not there. I'm jealous I'm not there. Point blank. All right, so Tim, why don't you let our people know, what are we reviewing today? What are we discussing? What are we talking about?
Well, not being an American myself, this is something that is new to me, and that is Cartoon All Stars to the Rescue, the anti-drug special broadcast on April 21st, 1990.
All right, Mike, what was your history with this? Like really quick, like, you know, growing up and.
Okay, so this is obviously this iconic special, whether it's good or bad, that's basically objective. But it's an iconic special, and because it gathers all of these cartoon stars that someone who grew up in the late 80s would know. So that would be me. And I remember very much looking forward to this special because literally every cartoon character I watched on Saturday mornings was in this thing. Mm-hmm. I couldn't care less that it was an anti-drug thing. Like that didn't mean anything to me. But the idea of Michelangelo, Bugs Bunny, and Garfield being in the same special, like that was big. And what Tim didn't mention is that this thing was so big, it aired on ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, USA, and in syndication. I think it might have even aired on Nickelodeon.
Oh, wow.
So if you were watching TV, I believe it was the Saturday morning that this aired, you couldn't escape it. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. And I was the target generation for this. I'm not saying it meant a lot to me. Didn't think I watched it much, but I remember it being a huge deal. Mm-hmm. How about you, Will?
Okay, for me, I did not catch it when it aired on live TV. Again, I was overseas. But I remember inside the military base, inside of Fort Buchanan, we had a store called the Shopette. The Shopette is like a smaller version of the PX. For those of you who live on military base, you know what the PX is. The Shopette is like a mini version of it. So like they did have video rental there. So I think they had like maybe 3 to 4 copies of that Cartoon All Stars Rescue, but it was never there. But it was a big deal. So like every time we used to go to the Shopette, we were hoping it was there. Finally, I just kept asking the store owner, you know, like, what day is it due to come back? And he would tell me the day. And then I would just kind of hang out. There was a pool like right across the street from the Shopette. So I would constantly, like every hour on the hour, try to go back in there. Hey, did they return it? Did they return it? I probably did it like 2 weekends in a row. And finally I got lucky and someone brought it back and he held it behind the counter for me.
You know why I bet it was so hard for you to find it? I'm looking at the VHS promotional poster. Mm-hmm. Rental stores rented it out for free.
Yep.
That's why it was probably so hard to get it in stock.
Yeah, it was very hard to get. So when we finally got it, all right, don't judge me. I was 10, 11 years old when this came out. So we made a copy of it.
Wow.
Yeah, we hooked up 2 VHSs, VHS players, and I copied it before I had to return it because I wanted to make sure I had a copy of this thing.
We did that all the time. I'm not judging you. Although probably somewhere in a box in storage, I might have the VHS with the original television recording of this thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe. I have to go through my tapes one day.
Now, Mike and Tim, I forgot about this thing. Probably until like the DVD errors first came out. And I just remember seeing like in some old school forums, about 80s and 90s cartoons and stuff, people were just so requesting for this thing to come out on DVD. And then that's when I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that thing,
It's a rights nightmare. That's never going to happen. Although that said, now these characters are owned by less companies now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when this came out, the Muppet Babies weren't owned by Disney, and Nickelodeon didn't own Garfield or the Ninja Turtles. So you could probably do something like this and get less companies involved. I mean, it's never going to happen, but it's kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, man.
But I think what keeps this popular today is people love the crossover idea. Like, whenever people talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the main thing they discuss is, wow, isn't it amazing how Warner Brothers and Disney cooperated for this? This is why this special is still talked about. Because people are still so shocked all these characters got together. Nobody pays attention to the anti-drug thing. In fact, most people just make fun of it. It's the cartoon characters mingling that they're really interested in.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
So really quick, let me just go over the credits of this thing, because there's a few surprising things about this. First of all, one of the executive producers was Roy Disney, so Walt's nephew, and it was distributed by Buena Vista. So Disney, yeah, they had a hand in this in more ways than just the characters they loaned out. It was written by Dwayne Poole and Tom Swale, writer people I don't know. Tim, does that have any relevance to you?
Both of them worked at Hanna-Barbera for years as a team.
Oh, that would explain why Hanna-Barbera got a shout out during the credits, even though they didn't own any of these characters. That makes sense. And I find the most interesting thing about the credits, to me at least, is that the song in the middle of the special, A Wonderful Ways to Say No, that was done by Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, right between Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. I mean, a year and a half after this thing, about a year and a half after this thing aired, Howard Ashman was dead.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing they were involved with this. And then, of course, you look at the voice talent. Wow.
Yep.
And it's also kind of sad a lot of these men are dead, and women, because Russi Taylor was in this too. But we have a Darkwing connection. Jim Cummings was in this thing. Tim, before we move on to actually talking about the special itself, do you want to set up how this thing came to be, or add any other background information?
Yeah, certainly. So just brief context. I mean, this was during George H.W. Bush's administration and his war on drugs. And there's a video online of a speech he gives in the White House, with that followed by a speech by Joe Biden, who was the Delaware senator at that time. But anyway, there is a rare joint congressional hearing that happened on the Thursday, April the 19th, 1990, where they basically previewed a kind of an unfinished version of this before it went out for broadcast. And it gives a lot of details, actually, when you read the transcript, which I found on the Institute of Education Sciences website, if anyone's interested in looking at that. But basically, it lists, as you mentioned before, Mike, Roy E. Disney was really the person who pushed this. And Buena Vista, as you say, distributed 350,000 videos to rental stores and libraries. Not Disney, though, but just Buena Vista. And this was the reason for this was that the deal set up was that not one party would be benefiting from this or seen as the creator of it. It was seen as a joint thing, and I think that neutralizes it by having it under Buena Vista and not making it a Disney thing. George C. Scott, the great actor from Patton, he was paid an SAG minimum to voice the villain in this piece, and he had just worked on Disney's Rescuers Down Under as well. So he obviously, his agent was probably pushing him to get into kids TV. The whole project was funded by McDonald's and Ronald McDonald's children's charities at $1 million. It was produced by Peabody Award-winning Buzz Potemkin, who was a producer who'd done, I think, Berenstain Bears specials and the Teen Wolf cartoon. And the production company for this, again, not Disney, not any production company, not Potemkin's production company, but it was the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Foundation. And the
Although not to interrupt you, I do want to mention before I forget, the animation was farmed out to Wang.
Yes.
Which we have talked about on the Darkwing episodes. They did do Darkwing episodes. They did do Ducktales episodes. That's why the Huey, Dewey, and Louie look as good as they do, because Wang worked on that show. Wang worked on Garfield, and Wang worked on Tiny Toons. So if Bugs Bunny looks familiar, that's because that's how he looked on that show too. But yeah, Wang did all the animation on this special. I wanted to mention it here because I didn't want to forget. So continue, Tim.
And another Darkwing connection, quite significant as well. The musical director for this whole show was Steve Tyrrell, who was the producer of the Darkwing Duck theme song, as we know it, the version that went out in syndication. So there's a big connection there too, and he interpreted and adapted and arranged Menken and Ashman's songs for this as well. But this whole project had begun. It's sort of 4 years in the making. So in 1986, there was the Television Academy had launched a campaign against substance abuse. And in October of that year, Nancy Reagan did a keynote speech at a luncheon addressing over 1,000 members of the TV industry and all the studio heads of Hollywood. And then Richard Frank, who was a president of Walt Disney Studios, he was in attendance, and he immediately got to work on a substance abuse conference where he spoke to different people from the government and medicine, and created from that. They had the campaign against substance abuse, which had this outreach program, and Cartoon All Stars to the Rescue was promised to not be a preachy lecture that kids will want to turn off. So and that whole day was hosted. That preview was hosted by Joe Biden. So it's got a real interesting history to it.
And the VHS copy of this begins with Bush and was it Nancy Reagan or no? Laura Bush.
Barbara Bush.
Barbara Bush. I'm sorry. I'm blank. I just blanked for a second. But what I wanted to mention is the VHS does also, and the original airing, have a commercial for the Ronald McDonald House too. Mm-hmm. And which is still a thing. They still have the donation boxes right in front of the registers at McDonald's. I mean, say what you will about McDonald's and their rotten food, although I am addicted beyond belief, but I agree the food is not great. They still do good things for children. And that is the one good thing about that company that I hear very few negative things about. And the commercial they play before this special is actually pretty moving. Mm-hmm. With the, the handicapped children singing the song, and it's very sweet. Mm-hmm. So Tim, was there anything more you wanted to add, or are we ready to start this thing?
Really, that's it. I mean, the only other thing is that I'd read a breakdown too. I think it's on Cracked. I might have that wrong.
But that would be so funny.
Is it? I think I've got that wrong.
I'm thinking it'd be so funny considering the subject matter. It was in Cracked.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a good oral history of this where the writers talk, and they kind of mention about Christmas Carol being an influence on this, and I think you can also see a bit of, I think, the Pinocchio, the boys turning into donkeys. There's an element of that there. So it's got that's an interesting breakdown, and worth checking out too.
I do wonder how much Roger Rabbit's success kind of paved the way for them to get all these characters together, because it has to have had some influence.
It's definitely possible. Definitely possible. You know what, Mike, before we get into this, I want to ask you and Tim something. Before we start this review, which character was you the most drawn to see? Like, I have to see this because this character's in it.
Here's my 1990 answer, and here's my 2023 answer. In 1990, 100% Michelangelo. Because while all the rest of these characters' stars were pretty much fading by 1990, aside from maybe Pooh, Ninja Turtles was still white hot. I think this was right around the time the first Turtle movie came out.
Yeah.
So Ninja Turtles was still the big thing.
Yeah.
Alf, Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, those guys were fading. Ninja Turtles was huge. That got my attention. In 2023, it would have been when I watched this for this episode we're doing, it was Bugs and Daffy.
Completely
because
swap. Yeah. Okay.
because I will tell you, I love Darkwing Duck. I don't know if I've really said this on the podcast, but if you were to ask me who are your favorite cartoon characters of all time, I would say Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. I've never really said that on the podcast because it's a Disney Darkwing kind of thing. But Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny are like the greatest cartoon characters ever. And at this point in adulthood, I recognize that. And that's what I was looking forward to most when I watched it this time. Although 10-year-old me went nuts for Michelangelo.
How about you, Tim?
Mike absolutely nailed it. 1990 me would be Michelangelo, 100%. 2023 me, George C. Scott, because I just think that's just incredible.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say for me, 1990, it was a tie between Michelangelo and Huey, Dewey, and Louie. It was definitely a tie for me back then. Now, and as an adult, it's the Muppet Babies because I cannot find them anywhere. That old G Muppet Baby stuff. I know Disney did a reboot of it, and it's modern version of it, but like that old school version, I just can't find it anywhere, man.
There's a variety of reasons why they won't legally release it anymore. I remember Katie Lee saying she wasn't happy about that because she was Rolf.
Is it the music and the Star Wars references and all that stuff?
I think it's two things. I think it's all the footage they use in Muppet Babies that even apart from Star Wars, there's stuff in there that Disney does not own the rights to. Second, I think Disney would just prefer to bury it so they can keep the newer version around as the definitive Muppet Babies. That's what Katie Lee seemed to insinuate. They want to bury this to keep the newer version more relevant. But I think all the rights issues with the original show is the real problem because Disney just doesn't want to spend the money. It's a shame.
Yeah.
I think anything Henson did should be on DVD, but a lot of it isn't.
Dang. All right. So
it's a shame.
So Tim, you want to go ahead and take us away and let's get this plot and let's get this review going, man.
Okay. So firstly, and certainly on the copy that I saw, there's a video graphic presenting Cartoon All Stars. And then we see into what I believe is film footage of George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush stroking their dog. And it's two shots. We've got one that develops from a kind of a wide, I think, I can't remember if it's a close-up to a wide or wide to a close-up. But Bush says, make the right decisions, stay away from drugs and alcohol. And they sort of summarize the plot very briefly, but that's these two shots and they look cute with their dog. And then we fade out and then we fade in. And we see hillsides and a white picket fence, kind of perfect Norman Rockwell middle-class neighborhood. And you can kind of see behind this hills and stuff. And we move over to a big, really very, very big upper middle-class house. Did either of you live in a house like this?
Nah, man. That's like TV homes, man.
All cartoon characters' homes in the 80s and early 90s were much bigger than mine ever were.
Yeah, and they all had the picket fence, you know.
The thing that I noticed actually, even at the beginning, is as soon as it begins, maybe you have an answer for this. I noticed that they are trying to show everything from a a miniature person's perspective. So it's like the camera is really low on the ground, looking up, and everything looks distorted. And I don't know, later on, we're kind of going into the character's mind with drugs and things, and everything kind of goes out of control. But just at the beginning, it's like they're setting everything up as small. And then we move into the bedroom of Corey in this big house. And she is the sister of the protagonist, Michael. And again, we're seeing lots of these kind of small miniature people perspectives, and we go down onto the ground and we see a comic book filled with Smurfs, and Papa Smurf is woken up because actually just before this, a piggy bank which is resting on the side of a table is taken by a hand out of the doorway. And so Papa Smurf says, "What's that noise?" And it alerts everyone. He says, I was smurfing like a baby. And
I'm just laughing because, like, as a child, I didn't see the relevancy to seeing that the Smurfs were like watching somebody steal a piggy bank in somebody's bedroom, you know. But like, and as an adult, I'm like, that's a little weird. A comic book with the Smurfs, you know.
They also treat this as the biggest scandal.
Yeah.
Well, you know, comic book with the Smurfs were a comic before they were ever a cartoon. Well, so I don't know if this is like a knowing reference to that or just a way to get them into the special. But, you know, I will say that whenever the characters show up, they're drawn like they're supposed to look. They're voiced by the people who voiced them. Even some of the music, like they play the music from that is associated to the characters. So the characters, when they appear, it's like super legit.
Yeah, I agree. I would.
You feel like, hey, it's the Smurfs. You got Don Messick as Popper Smurf. You got Barry Gordon as Brainy Smurf. I don't know where Smurfette is, though. You don't see her. But it's the Smurfs. Like, there's no corners cut. It's just these characters that we've been watching on TV our entire lives, because I grew up with these guys. Yep. It's the Smurfs. Yeah, and it makes it really weird. They're all going to be talking about marijuana in about a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so when they jump out of the comic book, we finally get, I believe Alf and Garfield were next, right?
And Kermit the Frog. And what's really weird, and I'm just going to add to what I said about the miniature point of view thing. Are these characters, or are they the toys? Are they the merchandising of these characters? Because you have, as you say, Mike, you have the Smurfs in a comic, you have a Kermit clock, you have Alf in a picture frame, then you've got Garfield as a lampshade,
which I think was a thing. The Chipmunks are in a record album cover, and Pooh is a legitimate stuffed animal.
Yeah. So my feeling is, because I know we've said this before about the Roger Rabbit comparison. In Roger Rabbit, those characters were supposed to be cartoons in the human world. It feels like in this that the characters are toys, are toy versions of themselves in this, you know, in this human world.
But as we go deeper, though, they kind of abandon that.
Yeah. They do. And also the scale of how tall they are. Like at the beginning, they are miniature people. They are like toys, but then later on they become human size, and they kind of adjust from scene to scene, whatever the story needs. So yeah,
the whole special's surreal though, with like crazy dream sequences. So I don't think logic is really supposed to play into it, as long as you get the message that drugs are bad. You know? Sure. And it's funny you mentioned Alf and Garfield. Funny for a couple of reasons. The main one is putting Alf alongside a character that he would gladly eat if he had the chance.
Oh, yeah.
And second, this was like a couple of months at the most before the Alf sitcom ended and Alf faded into obscurity.
Right.
But this was when Garfield was probably still pretty popular. And it's so weird to hear Lorenzo music as Garfield. I really miss him.
Yeah.
I really miss him.
I will say this though, Alf is the one of the cartoon I was the weakest of. I didn't watch his cartoon as much. I did watch the live action series though.
I didn't watch the cartoon much either. I think I maybe watched it once in a while, but the TV show I loved.
Yeah.
And then so we got the Smurfs, we got Alf, we got Garfield. Who's next, Tim?
Well, also Alvin and the Chipmunks are in a record we mentioned before, and then for no reason, the only one who isn't really represented as a product is Slimer, who appears through a wall and then devours an ugly lampshade. Not the Garfield one, but there's another ugly lampshade that has fruit next to it for absolutely no reason, and then that justifies Slimer to then fly up in the air, and from his mouth he fires a beacon of light onto the area where the missing piggy bank once was.
Who was the voice of Slimer? Who was the voice of Slimer?
That would be Mr. Frank Welker.
Wow. OG.
Yep. I think he's probably the one. No, Don Messick would probably be a little bit more, but yeah, Frank Welker at this point was already established for about 20 years.
And wasn't Lorenzo Music one of the Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he was one of the Ghostbusters too. I think Slimer gets the least amount of screen time in this thing.
Understandably.
Right? You don't really get a lot of Slimer. Any other characters? Have we hit them all? Kermit.
I think I've written down Bugs Bunny poster on wall ?
There is one. There is a Bugs Bunny poster in Michael's room.
Okay, there we go.
And Kermit's Frank Welker too.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Baby Kermit was Frank Welker.
Did not know that. Okay.
Yep. And does Pooh speak in this scene at all?
I don't think so.
Yes,
No, yeah, he tried to wake up Corey.
Yeah.
So that would be our first of, I think, 2 Jim Cummings connections, because obviously he's Pooh.
Yeah. And they're all very.
Go on, Tim. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying they're all very ineffectively trying to wake Corey up, as Will says, she obviously sees that the piggy bank is missing, and we see Michael, I believe, in his room, and he's confronted by Corey, and he has a metal box, and I'll leave you to discuss that.
First thing I was gonna say is, you guys know who voiced Michael?
No.
Jason Marsden.
Yep.
Wow.
Good old Max.
The future Max Goof.
Yep.
Yeah, so he doesn't want Corey to see the box, so he hides it under the bed where the Chipmunks and Alf. Is Garfield there too?
I don't think Garfield was there.
I gotta say, I really appreciate Alf and Garfield being in this scene, because they can come up with the humor that kind of at least cuts through the drama of all this drug stuff. At least. And then so they open the box, they see the drugs, and that's when Simon says, I'd hate to think this, but it's marijuana. It's so weird to hear him say that.
Yeah.
He says, marijuana, an unlawful substance used to experience artificial highs.
Until they legalize it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Simon. Okay, so Tim, what happens after that?
Well, Corey says Michael is acting weird and asks what's wrong with his eyes. And then Michael kind of is snappy, and Corey says, but you always tell me everything. And Michael basically makes a run for it, and leaves the house, and we hear his mother call out to him, Michael, are you okay? And the cartoon all-stars, I forget which ones, but they say Michael needs our help, and they're determined to follow Michael. And when we see Michael leave the house, we established at the beginning of the episode that on looking down one side of the road on their street is this picturesque hillside with just picturesque, beautiful countryside with hills, and on the other side we now see that there is this caricatured cartoon Roger Rabbit-like dirty cityscape, and it's all within walking distance. So then we go to a video arcade.
Can I just say it's really weird how all these characters decide to run after him and help him?
Yeah, they all made a pact.
But they kind of don't really do anything. Do we even see the Smurfs again?
I think we see them during the song later.
Aside from the song, like the Smurfs, the Chipmunks, definitely those guys. Garfield too. They don't do anything from this point on. It's kind of just like, hey, remember these guys? They're not really gonna do much, but here they are. Although Pooh does not come with anybody else. He stays with Corey.
Yeah, I think Slimer's done, right? I don't think we see Slimer ever again.
No, we never see Slimer. I think maybe at the very, very end, but I think that's it for Slimer.
Okay.
It's possible they may have had like certain contracts on how often they use some of these characters. Anyway, so Tim says they go to an arcade.
I mean, right? I was just going to add to that, Mike, what you said. I think that there's probably a checklist that it feels like very much so that they're introducing all this IP up front, and every one of them has to have equal screen time and equal amounts of lines as well, or at least later on they're all going to balance out in terms of what they are. So it's a very contrived way to open a piece, and this is like it goes on for 5 or 10 minutes. Before we actually get to the story.
It seems very intent to get you excited. Like, oh my God, look at all these 80s Saturday morning cartoons that you love. But most of these guys don't factor into the story after this.
Yeah. Well, we get to the video arcade, which is portrayed as very demonic. And we hear lots of very evil 80s electric guitar music, which sounds very, very villainous. And Michael is smoking with his friends. And at this point, as he blows on his joint, we get a swirl of smoke come out. And there's a character who's literally called
Smoke.
And he's voiced by the great George C. Scott, who, as I said, I think Roy Disney probably grabbed him while he was walking out of the recording booth for Rescuers Down Under and said, "Hey, we're doing this drug thing."
Yeah, and I gotta say, from a visual standpoint, this special isn't much, but I do love the design of this character.
Okay.
I think he looks cool. I mean,
think so
maybe I
too.
shouldn't say that because he's the villain. He's trying to get the kid to smoke, but I think he's a cool design.
Yeah, very Ghostbusters.
Yeah, very much so.
Oh man, that's funny. You say maybe I shouldn't say that. I think it's fine at our age. You can say it.
I know. I'm a teacher, so there's a little bit of me that feels guilty about saying things like that.
I can see that as a teacher and you're a father. I can see that, but still, you know. Oh, my bad, Tim. Go ahead. Keep going.
It's fine. And then one of Michael's friends says, "There's a new drug I want to show you," and then he reveals, but doesn't name what I'm guessing is supposed to be crack.
Oh yeah, crack was a big deal in the '90s, the early '90s, man. I remember the first time I even heard of crack was from that movie New Jack City with Wesley Snipes, and
Right.
they made crack a big deal in that movie. That's all I kept hearing about in the '90s. It was the new version of cocaine, and it was cheaper.
I have to say, I'm glad in a way they did introduce the crack, because if this entire thing was just about marijuana, it'd be a lot harder to take it seriously.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal opinion. As someone who, I mean, it's legal. As someone who has done that, it's not a big deal. And if the whole special was about it, it'd be very silly. So introducing harder drugs was probably a smarter way to go. That's just my own opinion.
I think if they'd been consistent with one or the other, because I think this idea of leaping, one introduces you to, I mean, what it's trying to say in the show is that the peer pressure, it's about the peer pressure, isn't it? People saying, try this, don't be a baby, try this. But the leap of logic that you're going to be having marijuana, and then at one point they talk about alcohol, and then that leads to crack, and then later on it leads to what's implied to be heroin, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's very out of touch with reality. But
but so are the people making laws against this stuff. So
absolutely,
anyway,
that's another episode. Isn't it?
Everything was demonized because everything was demonized, whether it made sense or not.
And people in the 80s entertainment industry were definitely not taking coke. Definitely not. So
definitely not, right?
It's just really funny we're talking about this right now, because I was already watching Cheech and Chong movies at my age, so it was like, to me, weed was like, I couldn't wait to at least try it one time. So it was like,
well, it was the 80s. Do a lot of coke and vote for Ronald Reagan. That's a Mystery Science Theater joke. So the cops show up, at least you hear the sirens, and all the kids make a run for it. Michael dashes down an alley. You see a big cop shadow on the wall. And then who should show up but the man,
your boy,
the man, the greatest cartoon character of all time, who's like so above every other character we've already met. It's not even funny. Bugs Bunny.
Have you noticed before, as he's coming up and when they're running out of the arcade, the way that they've drawn and the way that they've done the layouts for the backgrounds of this alleyway, they've made it to imply a prison. And remember, this is a time of where all mass incarceration was a big part of the war on drugs and Bush. And you can see, like, as Michael's running towards the wall, it's got barbed wire over the top of it, like a prison. And there's one, if you're really sad like me and you go through this frame by frame, you can see that in the background, you can see a silhouette of a skyscraper that's meant to look like a prison tower. So it's implying the idea of he's going to go to prison. I mean, that's how heavy-handed it is. But
look at a joint, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bug shows up, and then he's taking Michael to a time machine, correct?
That he borrowed from some coyote.
and was that Wile E. Coyote's time machine?
I don't think Wile E. Coyote ever used a time machine, but of all the Looney Tunes, I guess he'd be the one most likely to use one. Although he probably would have gotten it from Acme, so I don't think I would have try to use it. But I will say this was a year maybe after Mel Blanc died.
Wow.
So this is one of the first times I can remember that Bugs Bunny talked and it wasn't the real OG.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mel Blanc Frank Welker has nothing on Mel Blanc. So this was one of the first times he spoke without Mel Blanc. And I think he sounds like Bugs Bunny, right?
Yeah.
So where do they go? Where does he take him in this time machine that he borrowed from a coyote?
Well, we go into black and white mode, and the episode turns into structurally Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and he's taken back in time.
Because everything in the past is black and white, says Bugs.
and that's when they show like Michael as a kid where he has a shirt on with an M, so we know that's Michael, right?
And I do like when Bugs sees the joint, he doesn't like mess around. He just goes, "What's that? A joint?" It's like Bugs would totally refer to marijuana as a joint. Well, the other characters are too afraid to talk like that. That's just how Bugs Bunny talks, and I think that's pretty cool, because it's Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
While this is going on as well, by the way, we cut back to Michael's house and we see his dad is finding missing beer in the fridge. And I mean, it's very sexist how this is all kind of laid out, because you've got dad is very like an alpha stereotype, and mum, it looks like she's from a 1950s sitcom doing the dishes or something.
I didn't even notice that. I did not notice that.
But come on, our favorite characters in Darkwing Duck, one of them dresses like a 50s sitcom mom. That was just the thing.
No, but that was for humor. They were making fun of it. Whereas here it's totally with a straight face. And, she says, you probably watched them. You probably drank them watching football, dear. And then he says, I'm going to go clean out the garage. Call me for lunch. I mean, how completely backwards and sexist is that?
Honestly, the thing that surprised me the most about this entire special is how casual they had Dad go to the fridge for a beer. Yeah. I feel like they demonized all the drugs and Michael stealing beer. They demonized all of it, but they were totally matter of fact about the dad just going to get a beer for just casual drinking. And I don't know why that surprised me more than anything else. It just kind of did. Like the teenager shouldn't drink, but dad can go get a beer. Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know. Maybe just me. It was like that surprised me most, which is just, I guess that shows me my brain is with this.
Different time.
Because I mean, I didn't really ever see cartoon characters talk about beer, drink beer until Homer Simpson started doing it.
Duff beer, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, but Corey, she did attempt to tell the father about Michael at this point, though. She tried, but she didn't let it out.
Well, he also blows her off as him just being a teenager, and that's what teenagers do. They're weird.
But Pooh calls Corey out and says, why didn't you say something as well? But then, as we go back, Bugs is basically saying to Michael, if everyone jumped off a cliff, would you go too? And Michael says, well, I didn't want to be seen as a wimp. And Smoke says, lighten up on my man here. He's really playing the devil on Michael's shoulder.
Yeah.
And Bugs lectures Michael about self-belief. He says, you've got to believe in yourself.
Everybody has problems, kid, even us rabbits.
Yeah. And I think at this point Smoke says, but I make him feel good. And at that point, Bugs takes Smoke and he literally inflates him like he's a physical object, like he's made out of rubber at this point, and uses this to illustrate drug abuse. And then he as he's blowing him up and he's saying, it gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse. He says, is this what you want, Doc? Really? And then
Bugs is definitely a character you want on your side in a situation like that.
Yeah. Is this the last we see of Bugs? I think so, ain't it?
During the song, and I think at the very end.
Okay.
Yeah. So then Corey tells her dad that she's worried. And as you said before, he says that's part of being a teenager. Right. And I noticed Dad is holding a box. and it says I couldn't work out what this was, but it says KLIY on it, and it's got a nuclear sign on it. Anyone?
What is Dad's job? What is he storing in the garage?
Maybe he created the Ninja Turtles.
I noticed the whatever those letters were on the box, and I was like, what does that mean? But I didn't dwell on it too long.
Yeah.
Well,
and then I think we get the scene where they're like in the park or something,
Yep.
right? Michael's getting peer pressure from his friends. It's a guy and a girl.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. And at that point, and they now explicitly say that crack is the new cool drug.
Yep.
And Smoke is impressed by this. Michael has his wallet stolen by Smoke, who gives it to the friends, and then a chase ensues where Michael chases his friends to get the wallet back, and he runs down to where there's an open manhole and doesn't see it, even though it's right in front of him.
So this is where I'm going to say, this is probably where every child my age in 1990 went, oh,
We
here
knew
it
what was
comes.
coming. Yep, here it
As
comes.
soon as we saw the manhole cover and the electric guitar music started, everybody held their breath. Because in 1990, if you mention sewers and manholes, there's only one thing that we kids thought, only one thing our brains went to. That's how big the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were.
Yep.
You could see a manhole cover in a cartoon and you knew they were coming.
Yep.
Yeah. And at that point, Michelangelo obviously, what does he say? What's the first word he says?
Does he say cowabunga? Is that the first thing he says?
He says cowabunga, dude.
I guess they couldn't afford all four of them, so it's just Michelangelo. But
he
I guess
was the most popular, though. He was the most popular.
But the ironic part, if any one of the four of them is a stoner, you know it's Michelangelo.
Well, he says, you fell down a radical hole. And then he says, your brain must be really messed up. And at that point, Smoke, who also is chasing them, and he hits a manhole cover that is held up by Michelangelo, and he falls into the sewer as well. And we can see that the I guess what it is, the liquid waste that's on the ground of the sewer, it's kind of psychedelic, yeah. And at that point, Michelangelo pulls a plug in the sewer and takes them into this kind of vortex where they're in what's supposed to be a depiction of the human brain,
right,
on a roller coaster.
Yeah, with the Muppets.
And Miss Piggy says, after this ride, Kermit's taking me through the tunnel of love. Aren't you, Kermit?
Is this the first time we see Miss Piggy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So and Gonzo, right? This is Gonzo's first scene too.
Gonzo shows up here too. You know, Gonzo was voiced by Russi Taylor too.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh,
yep. And Piggy was Laurie O'Brien, who also voiced Mom.
Okay.
And with Gonzo's cameo or his appearance here, he's dressed as an artist, and that's there it's a visual gag telling you that this is an artist's impression of what drugs look like in your head. And this whole roller coaster ride trip, it looks like something from an 80s heavy metal album cover. It's all kind of crazy with lightning going off, and it's there to show the highs and lows. And Miss Piggy says, "This isn't romantic."
Very Miss Piggy.
Yep. And then it seems like the brain roller coaster ride is starting to fall apart, and Kermit and Miss Piggy, they make a run for it.
Right.
Yeah. And they smash out of some glass, and then we reveal that this is inside of Michael's mind. And he's kind of, there's a shot where it starts on his eye and it pulls back, and he's, oh, is this inside of me? And then we see outside of his body, he's trying to ride on a skateboard, but everyone inside is going, abandon brain, and they try to run towards a door labeled exit.
Yep. And they can't get out of it, but then he kind of like just wakes up or something, sort of like he snaps out of it, and then I believe he's like laying on the ground, correct?
Yeah, he says, somebody help me, what's happening to me? And we're 16 minutes into the episode. Guess who turns up? 3 people.
This was
Louie.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Will that after the Ninja Turtle, I would say I was most excited for those guys, because Ducktales was still running. It was almost over, but it was still running. and they first show them their webbed feet just kind of walk into the frame. So like even me as a kid, I'm like, I know who those guys are.
Yeah, I was really excited to see them, man.
I was too. It's funny how they chose them.
Yep.
Like I know Pooh and Tigger comes in later, but out of all the other Disney characters, they chose Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I guess it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole sequence, by the way, there is, if you go online on YouTube, there's a video and it's called something like Cartoon All Stars Reanimated. And it's got over 1 million views. It's really funny and it's great. It's really well done. But this whole sequence that now happens, leading into the musical number, which I mentioned in a second, it's been recreated by animators, modern animators, big YouTubers, and it's stunning. It's so much better than the actual show. And I urge you to check that out because it's fantastic.
What do they use different animation styles for each shot?
Yes, absolutely. That's what they do. Yeah.
Somebody did that for the steamed ham scene from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And it was really fantastic. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah. Well, at this point, Michael says, "Now I'm seeing ducks," and then I forget which one of the ducks says, "Drugs? Ah, bad news, Michael. Why don't you just say no?" And then at this point, we see a repeat. So in this TV special, we now repeat a shot we've seen earlier because they probably didn't have the money to do it, where that shot that I told you about that starts on Michael's eye, where it pulls back to show his whole body. They used that, and the musical number starts, and this is the Ashman and Menken song, which is called
There's a Million Wonderful Ways to Say No. Did I get that right?
I think, well, yes, you did, but I think just the way you said with uncertainty just shows you it's I love Menken and Ashman. I think Ashman is a genius. I feel like with this, as you mentioned before, Mike, he was probably dying at this point, and Roy Disney probably said, "Could you do the lyrics for this, for this cartoon special?" It feels like he's purposely written the world's most uncatchy song that you're not going to remember.
Hey, Howard. I know you have those lyrics you're working on, that Taylor's Oldest Time crap, but can you go do this special like really quick about drugs? Then you can get back to that Beauty and the Beast thing you're doing. No one's gonna remember. No one's gonna remember that, or that Friend Like Me song that Robin Williams sings. Forget that garbage. Go do this song now, Howard. Yeah, I just Menken, go help him, but that's more important than your Disney stuff, guys. Come on, go.
And also the arrangement of it. I was going to say the arrangement of it as well. Like, when you think of 80s catchy kids theme tunes and things like the Ninja Turtles, etc., you think of like rocket, they've got these kind of rock and roll keyboard type things, and it's really catchy. Whereas here, they've decided to arrange it like a 1930s Broadway musical number.
Well, that's Menken and Ashman, man.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like they just, yeah, Roy, I'll do that TV special for you, but I get to do whatever I want. That's what it feels like.
Also, think about the voices doing this song. You've got Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Baby Miss Piggy, and the Chipmunks. That's not a very relaxing sound for the ears.
No.
Good point. Yeah.
And
thought of that.
Garfield shouldn't sing.
Yeah, and then it's like if you actually listen to some of the lyrics of why they tell you to say no, like it's like that's the dumbest excuse that I would ever hear. Like if I was getting peer pressure from my type of friends, oh, because of my complexion.
My hamster died.
Yeah, my hamster died. Like they wouldn't care. They're still gonna keep trying to peer pressure me, That I was like, that made no sense. That was dumb. That's not gonna work.
Tigger shows up in this scene. Yes, he did. Jim Cummings, not Paul Winchell.
Mm-hmm.
And Bugs is there. Bugs does not get a line because he goes to say, "What's up, Doc?" And Alf covers his mouth. The nerve of that alien. The nerve of that alien.
Well, in one of the verses, they, for no reason, say, "There's a million international ways to say no." And then we cut to a shot of Gonzo dressed in lederhosen standing next to the Berlin Wall.
But that's Gonzo. You don't question Gonzo.
The Berlin Wall. Was the Berlin Wall still up back then?
It had just fallen down. So it was that was absolutely cutting edge. But the idea to take that and to sort of tastelessly, use imagery of lederhosen, like stereotypical German Bavarian stuff next to this very current affair thing. It's just in one shot as well that no kid's going to really pick up on. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. But the bridge, actually, okay, the bridge of the song where Garfield says, "Now you could say beat it, get lost, get out of my face with that stuff."
That
And then
line has been stuck in my head for 35 years. Whenever I think of the song, Garfield's line is all I remember. I don't know if it's because it's so different from everything else or Garfield's voice is so different, but I've never forgotten that line.
yeah, and this is, I think, I love the pace. This is really classic Menken Ashman. I think it's a brilliant bridge, and as you say, Tigger gets in there too. I mean, there's a point where Baby Gonzo says, "I'm late for my baseball game and I'll miss my ride." Tigger says, "My kid sister needs me," and Alf says, "Her hamster died." Like, so, it's lovely little staccato.
The hamster didn't die. Alf ate it. And the song ends when Baby Piggy actually karate kicks the camera and breaks the screen.
But I actually made a note of this because she kicks the screen and it cracks, but then it doesn't, like, you'd think that the scenery would then fall down around her. That would be the logic. But no, the glass just disappears and she falls back down and it continues like it never happened.
Their animation budget probably wasn't very high.
So crazy. But at that point, Michael wakes up from the nightmare and goes for his drugs box with the smoke. And I noticed, actually, I made a note of this. In his room, you can see that he's got a weird poster of a dog on his wall, like this really creepy poster of a dog. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I thought it was Spud and McKenzie or something.
It might. Well, that was his heyday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it could be from Budweiser. Spud and McKenzie.
Mm-hmm.
They also have, in the background, you can see a Zeppelin model hanging from the ceiling, and I'm wondering if this is a metaphor for the Hindenburg, because his mind is going out of control, and he's about
to crash and burn all the humanity.
Yeah, maybe we're thinking too much. Maybe they just ran out of stuff to fill in.
I'm sure, like, they get a basic design of these backgrounds, they throw them over to Wang, and they just paint what they want. I think a lot of the time, because look at how weird some of these posters are. I mean, this thing probably had a very strict deadline and budget.
Yes, absolutely, and especially with so many characters.
That's where the money went.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be brilliant if they had sent this over to TMS or something? But, Wang, it was one of the cheapest studios. The money spent to get things like Slimer, go to Columbia and get Slimer. And I'm sure Alf didn't come cheap because the guy who owns Alf is it's a piece of work. Mm-hmm. So that's where all the money went.
I think from what I read, though, most of it was SAG kind of minimums that they were paid just to get it made. So somebody must have been pocketing something somewhere. I don't know, because I, like you, I don't really see this feels like like a Chip and Dale episode or a Ducktales episode, like a filler episode that they would do just because they, just a low budget one where
visually this is a low tier episode of DuckTales or Rescue Rangers. Visually, that's absolutely all this is. No effort went into making this look nice.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, back to the plot though, this is where I believe Corey was asking Michael to speak to their parents, correct?
This is correct, yeah. Corey knocks on the door. And he physically hurts her and she runs away, and Smoke says, "You did the right thing, pesky brat."
Isn't this when they tossed Pooh in the cupboard or something like that?
Yeah, they tossed him in the cupboard, and then I think Alf, this is when Alf takes him through the closet door, right, into the mirrors.
Yeah, but he's reflected in the box, and I think at this point, I'm just looking at my notes, he basically takes Michael into a large hall of mirrors. We kind of go into kind of circus, freak show, fairground imagery at this point onwards for all the stuff that's happening in Michael's mind. But he shows Michael himself as a reflection, and Michael looks like a zombie, and Alf really lectures Michael at this point.
Another line that I've always remembered is when Alf goes, "Wrong, flag on the play." Always never forgot that. When he said it this last time I watched it, I'm like, I knew it was coming.
Yeah. And then he takes him to the door that says the man in charge.
Yeah, it's a plaque that reads the man in charge, and we then go into the office, and who is the man in charge sat at the desk of this office?
It's Smoke.
It's Smoke. And at this point, Corey sneaks into Michael's room and finds the box, and Smoke tells her to open it. And Pooh, at this point, warns Corey not to listen to Smoke. Oh, this is the point,
Oh
actually.
yeah,
Sorry.
this is where he throws him in the cupboard. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Smoke did it, not Michael.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he says, Smoke says, he doesn't get out much, but I do. And at that point, Smoke convinces Corey to use the drugs. But then we cut back to the fairground, and Michael is trapped in a funhouse roller coaster. And he sees surreal images of giant heads of witch characters on a merry-go-round.
I know I saw Dewey and Huey.
Mm-hmm.
It's Huey, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw their heads, like duck heads on some of the amusement park rides.
Yeah, and then
Piggy's there too.
with Tigger though, right?
Piggy and Tigger?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. They're on a mooring boat, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they give Michael a rubber raft, because what happens is Michael goes through the funhouse, goes past the Huey heads, and then he goes into a mouth, like this giant mouth, and it's like a fairground ride sculpture. And yeah, Tigger and Piggy are mooring this boat. They give Michael a rubber raft. We hear more scary electric guitar solo music playing and really dramatic electronic drums to really sell that Michael is in danger. And Smoke says, scared to try something new. And the scenery at this point is going really like full creepy carnival. And we see Michael fall on a hammer challenge ride and bottles.
I don't know why, but that scene always reminded me of like a Beetlejuice type look.
Yeah, absolutely.
It always did.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ride from hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at that point, Michael falls into a sewer vortex, and he's weirdly, surreally spat out by Miss Piggy, who is drinking a drink. So his scale is all over the place. He's changing sizes. And Michael then goes to see a clairvoyant at the fairground. Yep. And this turns out to be...
Go ahead, Mike. This is your second favorite boy.
Yeah. Sometimes I think he may even, overbugs. It depends on how I'm feeling. It's Daffy as a fortune teller.
Yeah.
And he gets my basically not only my favorite bit in the entire thing, but also another one of those bits I've always remembered. Instead of a crystal ball, he pulls out a bowling ball. And he mentions like your future is very dark or something like that. And Michael's like, you're looking into a bowling ball. And Daffy goes, all right, that explains the 7-10 split. And then there's a sound effect of pins getting knocked over in the background. Mm-hmm. It's such a great Daffy bit. It's funny just to be funny, in a very bleak special. I enjoy that kind of humor, which is what I think characters like Bugs and Daffy should bring to the table before this gets too dark. Daffy's not in it as much as Bugs, but I appreciate that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there is we've talked about this being quite an artless exercise, this episode, but there's actually quite a nice transition that happens where we see the ball, the crystal ball, and we see the hands, I think, of Daffy, and we transition to the hands of Corey holding the box and with the drugs, and she wants to bond with Michael by taking the drugs, and Smoke approves. And at this point, everything gets much darker. What happens now? Do we remember?
That's when he runs into the room, right? Michael runs back into the room.
Well, before that, in true Dickens Christmas Carol fashion, Daffy says, your future lies behind those doors. And inside, we see Michael laid on a table, and he has green skin.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The zombie look again.
He's very much holding a heroin syringe as well, or a very off representation of one, which I noticed that.
I was going to say easily the most morbid shot in the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for a second, it looks like he's laying in a coffin. When you first see the long shot of him, you think he's dead.
Yeah, yeah. You use, you lose.
Yeah, Al said that, I think.
Okay.
That sounds like an Alf line.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, I think, in my notes, I'm not sure where the geography is here. We think we're jumping between that world and also the house, the bedroom. But at this point, Piggy says, we care about you, Michael. And Huey, Dewey, and Louie say, believe in yourself. And Michelangelo says, you're excellent just the way you are. So, yeah, They really apparently care for him.
Yeah, and then Michael finally goes running back into the room, correct?
And he knocks the box out of Corey's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he finally stands up to Smoke. And what does he decide to do at this point?
He tossed him out the window, and I think he lands in the dumpster.
In
That's
a garbage
right.
truck.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. And then Smoke warns us, and I believe, how long has it been since this came out? 33 years.
Mhm.
He says, "I'll be back." So watch out, everyone.
Yeah. Then Michael says, "I'm sure we'll see you again." Something like that, right?
Well, it doesn't mean that Michael's completely over any addictions he had. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like doesn't mean he's kicked it forever. People relapse, which
Mhm.
is the scary part. You know, this Smoke guy is not going to go away.
Yeah.
But
And
they
if it's not Michael, it'll just be somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at this point, all the cartoon characters gather into a poster on the wall, which we kind of see earlier as really not very well done Wang background earlier. And Pooh at that point reappears from the cupboard, and he says, "I thought I was going to miss something important." And they all gather and pose in this unified poster, like in real life. And then Michael and Corey say, "Let's go and see Mom and Dad." And following this, we cut to the credits, and we hear
credits.
And we hear a very, very schmaltzy 80s electric piano power ballad version of "The Wonderful Ways to Say No," which I actually think it's a very heartfelt, very tender way to send off this special.
Mm-hmm. I did, Mike, really quick. I did type down during the credits all of their copyrights, their studios that they belong to. Okay, so it says Alf was Alien Productions,
right?
Muppets, Muppets were Henson Associates, Bugs and Daffy were Warner Brothers, Alvin and Chipmunks was Bagdasarian, Garfield was United Feature Syndicate, Huey, Dewey, Louie, Winnie the Pooh, and Tigger are Walt Disney. Slimer is Columbia Pictures, Smurfs, Hanna-Barbera, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle was Mirage Studios.
Well, actually, I believe the Ninja Turtles was Murakami Wolf Swenson.
Okay.
Because they own the rights to the cartoon.
Okay. That's what it said at the end. I just saw the Mirage Studio thing.
Oh, it mentions Mirage? Okay, because I also saw the Murakami Wolf Swenson one in the credits too, and I know that's Ninja Turtles. So maybe it was both. Because you know what I also saw in the credits? Marvel.
Marvel was in the credits too?
Yes, and I think that has something to do with Muppet Babies, because I think they were co-producers on that.
Okay.
But just seeing all those copyrights,
it
really hits home. More studios had to come together for this than Roger Rabbit. Because Roger Rabbit, it was Warner's, Disney, MGM, and Fleischer. This is like twice the amount.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, we didn't discuss this before, but I'm not saying you have to go first, but I kind of want you to set the rules on this. How do you want us to score this thing, man?
If I want to be really evil, I'd say like out of 5 joints, but let's not be mean. Although before we score, the one thing I was going to say about, it's funny that Tim mentioned the poster at the end. That poster in the cartoon itself has Michelangelo on it, but every official poster art for this special I've ever seen, he's not on.
Yeah, he's not on it, and I think Smurfette is on it.
Yes, Smurfette is on it for some reason, and Michelangelo, who you think would be the biggest draw, is not on the poster. There might have been some contractual thing keeping him off. Anyway, so how should we rate it? Out of what? Let's be real here. Out of
number of wonderful ways to say no.
Okay, all right, sure. Who do you want to rate this first? You want me to do it?
No, let Tim go first, since he wasn't even in the US. Let him go first.
Oh my goodness, I haven't composed my thoughts on this. I tell you what,
need time?
I think it's best if Mike and Will go first, actually.
Okay. Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So we're doing it out of 5, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna give it maybe 2 wonderful ways to say no, because it's not good.
Mhm.
I mean, once you get past the nostalgia rush of these characters, it's not good. I mean, it's not animated well. The message is very preachy. It's very confused about what it's talking about.
Mhm.
And since they have legalized marijuana, it does kind of feel very dated and very reactionary, demonizing things that probably shouldn't be demonizing, but that's just my opinion. And a lot of the characters are pretty dated. You know, Alf, the Chipmunks, the Smurfs, you know,
Mhm.
Slimer. But I do enjoy bits of it, but not enough to bring it past 2 wonderful ways to say no. So that's where I'll go. I'll just give it 2. How about you, Will?
Okay, I'm gonna give it the same score, but I'm gonna go a little deeper on why I'm giving it. To me, 2. I'm being generous, and
Oh,
this is the reason why I'm being generous toward it. One was the crossover. It was a big deal to have all these characters crossed over into one episode. You know, the Muppets and Winnie the Pooh and Ninja Turtles and Ducktales, so forth. So I'm gonna give it like 1 point just for that, just the crossover itself. But there was one point to when I saw this again as a teenager, and I can really connect to it. Pretty much 90% of the times where you see Michael engaging in with the drugs, the peer pressure amongst his friends was a big deal to me, because like my friends were no different. Come on, Will, take a sip. Come on, Will, take a hit. Peer pressure is a mug when you're a teenager. I can't say that as a 10 and 11-year-old. It wasn't nobody peer pressure me to drugs back then. But as I got older, it was a serious thing. Like you want to be accepted by your peers. You know, I was on the basketball team, the football team, baseball, soccer. And if you didn't smoke weed, they were gonna make fun of you. You know, like you didn't fit in, or they would kind of start labeling you as the snitch. So it was a big deal. So I will give that an extra point of how they elaborated on the peer pressure, you know, toward Michael. So I will give it 2, but other than that, I can't justify giving it any more points. Tim?
I will say, now that I've heard both of your scores,
Mm-hmm.
I may bump it up to half. If I'd gone first, I would have just said 0, maybe even minus. I I think when I first heard about this whole thing, I thought, wow, the idea of having all those IP characters, as we said, the kind of Roger Rabbit of Saturday morning cartoon, that sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched it, I was just appalled by how out of touch it is. And it's made by people who, A, didn't understand drugs. And it's a very, very complex, very sensitive subject matter, but also they didn't understand or care about kids' cartoons. And when you read that hearing that I mentioned before, the one that's hosted by Joe Biden, that's more entertaining than this episode. From a story point, a script writing point of view, it's terrible. It begins with introducing so much IP. It's inconsistent in its storytelling, its tone as well. Like at times, it's deathly serious, but it's also presenting very cartoon, very broad, stereotype versions of the world and people. It feels like, do you remember the Darkwing Duck episode Comic Book Capers, when Pinky Muddlefoot was writing the Darkwing comic, and she's just absolutely just making it all out to be plastic and just not what it is? That's what it feels like. And I don't put that down to the writers. I think it's conceptually just a bad idea that shouldn't have been made. And I actually really like, there's a TV show called Galaxy High, and there's an episode of that, an anti-drugs episode of that. And that's fantastic because it doesn't specify things exactly. It kind of alludes to drug taking. And I urge you to check that out as a better example. I'm sure I haven't seen that in a decade or so, but I remember it thinking that's kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Half a no.
Okay.
A way to say no.
Hey, I'm not mad at you, Tim. I'm not mad at you because it's not good.
I could have been meaner. I mean, I'll be honest. It's kind of a really embarrassing special. It's not something I want to be watching with other people. Like I waited until the last minute to watch this before we recorded because I did not feel comfortable watching it with anybody else in the room because it's really corny and it's just, if I had never seen it before and I was like, hey, I asked my wife, let's check this out. But the fact that I'm aware of it and I know what happens in it and I know it's terrible just made me uncomfortable watching it unless I was alone, because it's just really cheesy. Maybe I could have been harder on the score, but I guess just the thrill of seeing these characters, despite what Tim says about them not being used right, if you've grown up with them, it is a bit of a thrill. But once you get past that, it's a complete mess.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm on eBay right now, and that VHS is going pretty high, man. I'm seeing it all over the place, from $49 to $75 to $68.
Which is crazy because that thing was everywhere.
Yeah, $30. This is or best offer. It's all over the place. $60, $200. Somebody has it for $200. Oh, it's a sealed version.
But no, it's never going to be on DVD or Blu-ray, though. So if you want an official copy, this is your only way of getting it. I mean, it's all over YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
It's
watch
not
it
like
for
you can't see it.
Wow. I see another person has it for $250, and it says it's sealed. And he has a photo of it showing proof that it's sealed. It's not even
Wow.
open.
So
Yeah.
have we put this special to bed, guys?
Yeah.
There's just
So-
one thing I wanted to mention quickly, which I think is a nice way to kind of reflect on a positive side of it. And it's from the cracked.com oral. It was cracked.com, by the way, the oral history of Cartoon All Stars.
That's again, that's very funny. It's cracked considering the subject matter.
But there's this one segment, I'll just read it, where it quotes Jim Cummings. And it says, they originally had Winnie the Pooh saying to one of the kids, well, if ever you're on the street or a playground and someone offers you a joint, tell them no, just say no. And Jim Cummings apparently told them, he can't say that. Winnie the Pooh cannot say if someone offers you a joint. He could say if somebody offers you a smackerel of honey and you don't know them, tell them no. You know, that type of thing. I said, give that line to a Ninja Turtle. They could probably get away with it. And he said it was just an odd dynamic because I'm very, very, very protective. These are my guys, and I'm very propriety over them. I watch over them like the special characters they are.
Who lives in a forest surrounded by a handful of other characters? He doesn't know what a joint is.
Yeah.
But like I said before, they gave that term to the right character.
Yeah.
If Pooh couldn't say it, I'm glad Bugs did. So if we're done with this, I wanted to ask you guys something since I haven't been on the podcast at all. What do you guys think of that Darkwing plush from Shop Disney?
Ugh, that thing's hideous, man.
Did you buy it anyway?
No, I didn't buy it. I got
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure you were sane, at least. That thing is hideous.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I said it, you're not a part of our Darkwing chat anymore, but I was very clear that that thing was hideous, and I did want the pin, but I did gripe about it while I was buying it, and I said that in our Darkwing chat that it's too expensive, man.
I bought it.
Yeah, I bought it too, but I complained as I bought it.
Yeah, I mean, my wife sent me the link. She's like, have you seen this? I'm like, yeah, but now that you've shown me the link, I probably should just get it. So yeah, I bought the pin, but God, that plush is ugly.
Yeah, that plush is ugly, and that statue came out, the one where he holds the cape away. I've never seen him hold the cape before.
Yeah, that's a weird statue.
Yeah,
When are those action figures coming out?
with the cape?
No, Darkwing and Negaduck. When are those action figures coming out?
I think it's January or February.
Really? That seems like forever ago those were revealed. But here's a story I guess we can end on about that pin. So I got it 2 days ago. I came home and the box is big enough to fit a VCR inside. Just gigantic box. I walked into the living room and my wife and Helena were standing there like looking at the box and looking up at me and laughing. And I'm like, whoa, what's in that box? And my wife is like, you know what's in this box. I'm like, not the pin. I open the box. It's all like the inflatable like packaging and this tiny bag with the pin inside. This gigantic box had this tiny pin. And I just thought it was a funny story. I kept saying, it's one pin. I ordered one pin. Did you get yours yet, Will?
Yeah, mine came in. Mine, I saw your photo on Facebook. Mine was my box was like half the size of yours.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah,
I don't need a box that big for it. It's a cool pin. It's huge, though.
yeah.
Like,
You-
what would you even do with something that big?
Oh man, did you ever get the huge pin from Pink? What's the name of that store? Pink a la Mode or something?
No.
Yeah,
But
that
I-
enamel pin was huge, man.
But I did get that pin where you opened it and it's Scrooge and the pin is the money bin.
Yeah, okay, you did get that one.
That's a big one, too.
Hmm.
Like these Disney 100 Years pins, those are gigantic, man.
Did you get the Darkwing pin where it's like it says it's dancing Darkwing, but his head goes from side to side? Did you get
Oh, the
that one?
bobblehead thing? No, I didn't get that. I've
Okay.
gotten very selective. The only thing I've gotten lately, honestly, the only thing I've gotten since I stopped recording with the podcast were those two pins and the Fantagraphics book, the one with Rescue Rangers on it.
Okay. I did get
Otherwise,
that
I've
too.
kind of been, and the comics, of course, but
Mhm.
I'm not buying the statue with the cape. I'm not buying the action figures. I'm just not feeling how they look, and I ain't touching that plush.
Mm.
Well,
He
the
looks-
plush actually, Mike, I thought of you when I saw it because the first thing it reminded me of was it Freelance New Zealand Darkwing Duck in Heavy Mental when he's standing next to Cerebellum at the beginning of that episode. There's like a zoom in shot of him looking annoyed when I think he's being lectured, and I first thing I thought was, yeah, it reminds me so much of that. And I remember you tearing into that many times.
Well, two things. The eyes look like he's like it's funny we're talking about this specifically. His eyes make him look like he's on drugs, and the cheeks are not white. Like that's a huge quality control miss.
Yeah.
Like, how do you miss something like that?
Yeah.
Like nobody should buy this thing. It would send. I mean, it sends a terrible message that we don't want Darkwing products. We really do, but we don't want them if they look that terrible. But who am I to know? People are buying it anyway, so
Yeah.
you just can't win, can you?
So Mike, before we head out, man, what's going on with you as of right now? Are you doing anything else going on in life? What's going on?
Honestly, just going on life, helping my daughter get through 4th grade. I mean, this is the year where it starts to get hard. And she's not just doing that. She's playing the flute. She's in chorus. She's in swim. She's in martial arts. So she's got a lot going on that keeps us busy. Me, since I've kind of like stepped back a bit from the Disney afternoon stuff, I've really just kind of more embraced my Godzilla hobby more than I had been lately. So I recently bought a 4K player for some 4K Godzilla DVDs that are coming out in Japan. I'm really excited about that. I bought a new TV, and it's just now we're just getting ready for the holidays. I did go to a Godzilla related convention yesterday. It was a small little pop-up thing. It was the first thing I'd been to in a while. I'm just trying to keep busy and just,
Okay.
live life,
How about you, Tim?
I'm actually working on something that I may talk to you about later, I
Oh,
think,
okay.
without giving too
Oh.
much away.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, maybe when we're off mic, but yeah, I would love to see one day as well. I'm not working on this, but I'd love to see a Disney afternoon soundtrack release. If anyone from Disney is listening to this and they can get that memo somewhere, then please, I would love to have that.
Okay. Well, with me, really quick, guys. As y'all know, I morphed into an agent out of nowhere. I have not hit my 2-year anniversary yet. That'll be on December 4th. But I'm around 30 clients now. I just
Wow.
not on my website yet, but Daniel Logan, I just picked him up this past weekend. For those of you who don't know who Daniel Logan is, he played young Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones in Star Wars, and he was the voice of Boba Fett in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I just picked him up. I got like 7 Honkai Star Rails. So if you are a fan of that game, request my people. I got like 4 or 5 Genshin Impacts. I got like 6 Avatar: The Last Airbender. I recently just picked up the Cabbage Man from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
How do you keep track of all these people?
It's a lot, man. And he's also the voice of Jackie Chan from the cartoon series. I think it was called Jackie Chan's Adventures or something.
Yeah, that was it.
Yep. I'm missing some people. I got several new people, but my client list is just growing. I am growing as an agent. So those of you who follow me on social media and comment and stuff, I appreciate your support. I never thought in a million years I would be an agent, Mike. Never. And for those of you who always ask when are me and Mike were returning, me and Mike had a discussion through text messages maybe a month ago, and we do plan to pop up just quarterly, just maybe once every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, when we come up with something that justifies it, we'll because we're both busy. But I think Stan and Tiffany are doing a great job. I listened to what they've been doing. They're doing a great job.
Oh, and just one last thing, Mike, you're aware of this. Tim, I think you might be aware of this, but the St. Canard Files is part of something that will be popping up in December. And
oh wow.
Yes. So Mike, you're fully aware of what's going on, correct?
Yep.
All right.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. Basically an opportunity came up and I wanted to put my foot in something in Darkwing in this lifetime, but I could not have done it without Mike's blessing, since he helped me create this podcast. So he gave me the blessing and it's full throttle. Maybe we can give an announcement soon, but I know right now we're not legally allowed to.
No, we're not.
Okay, so that's it. So guys, thank you for tuning in to the St. Canard Files. This was our review of Cartoon All-Stars. I can't even think of the full name.
To the rescue.
To the rescue. Yeah. Okay, so this was our point of it. This is something I always wanted to hit, but we finally got touched of it. Mike, anything else before we go out?
No, I'm just gonna tell you to beat it, get lost, get out of my face with that stuff.
Tim, anything with you?
I can't top that. That was brilliant, Mike. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we hope y'all have a good one. And remember, stay dangerous.